Good afternoon and welcome to Midday News. I'm Milton Walker. We begin with news that Chairman of the RJR Gleaner Communications Group, J.A. Lester Spalding, is dead. Mr. Spalding was hospitalized early this week and has been receiving treatment. He died a short while ago in hospital. He became Managing Director of Radio Jamaica in 1978. He led the company through its expansion up to its recent merger to become the RJR Gleaner Communications Group. We'll have much more on Mr. Spalding and his work and life later in subsequent newscasts. Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, Christine Lagarde, says an international bank has offered to help address the region's banking challenges. Speaking at a high-level Caribbean forum at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel on Thursday, Ms. Lagarde notes that part of the struggles faced by the region's financial sector is because banks either take on too many high-risk loans or they do not lend enough.
But notwithstanding those important progress, the issue continues to be a challenge. And let me assure you that we are not giving up on that. It's not only the issue of the status of the correspondent banking relationship, it's also the issue of the costing of those transactions that we will try to help with. A major correspondent bank has offered to provide technical support to respondent banks in the region in order to better understand what is the situation and to help the Caribbean banks upgrade their system, improve their processes in order to satisfy the requirements back at home of that other bank.
Meanwhile, the IMF chief notes that some banks which left the Caribbean are also returning to help address some of the banking issues. The Police Federation is to send a letter to the Ministry of Finance, formally rejecting the government's offer to increase their pay by 6% during the 2017-2019 contract period. Rank-and-file members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force are said to be in a militant mood following a meeting yesterday where they mandated the Federation to get an improved wage offer from the Finance Ministry.
And we have found that 3% represents $99 on an average when you look at the increase across the rank and file, because it ranges from about $6 to $7 per day to somewhere in the region of about 110 as a per day increase. We rejected the offer. We found it most, disgraceful, to say the least, to want to offer our hard-working police officers $99 per day as an increase. So we called an all-island meeting. We took it to the members, and our members unanimously agreed that the matter must be rejected.
Despite a 23% increase in murder, Police Commissioner George Quayler failed to outline a new plan to tackle the country's crime problem. At a press conference which ended a short while ago, head of the Constabulary Communication Network, Stephanie Lindsay, told journalists that Mr. Quayler will not be sharing any crime plan as was widely expected. Mr. Quayler said 1,404 persons have been killed since the start of the year. The country recorded 1,137 murders during the corresponding period last year. TVJ News reported on Wednesday that the Commissioner held a high-level security conference with heads of the police areas and divisions to discuss the crime situation in the island. It's understood that during the meeting at the Police Officers Club in St. Andrew, Commissioner Quayler and the senior cops discussed measures to stem the bloodletting across the island. There have been mixed reaction from the Jamaica Teachers Association to the plan to install walk-through metal detectors at some public schools. The first walk-through scanner will be installed at the Edith Dalton James High School later this month after a student was stabbed to death by another student there in October. General Secretary of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Byron Farquharson, says while he understands the need for the devices, he hopes the walk-through scanners will not become commonplace in schools.
The Jamaica Teachers Association notes with unfortunate concern that the need for scanners has to be erected in our schools. I would consider it very unfortunate but seemingly unnecessary step at this time. Anything to prevent the levels of violence in our schools, and situations of indiscipline must be curbed. So we are hoping that it will not be a long-term measure that needs to be expanded and extended across the island. But if it is necessary, I would say anything necessary that is legal to curb the potential danger and damage to students and lives, then we support it.
In the meantime, President of the Association of Principals and Vice Principals, Otis Brown, says the devices should be seen as a proactive measure.
So I'd like us to see it in a preventative light, and for persons outside not to attach any stigma to schools because of having these detectors, but see us doing these things to make sure our school environments are a safe place and see it as being done in a preventative manner.
Walk-through scanners will also be installed at the Anchovy, Brownstown and Norman Manley High Schools. School is expected to reopen next week at the Challenge Basic School in St. James after a parent was shot and injured when he went to pick up his child on Tuesday. Principal Eileen McIntosh says she was forced to close school on Wednesday because of the impact the incident had on students who were between 4 and 5 years old. She says school was reopened on Thursday, but with a very low turnout of children. In the meantime, Commanding Officer for St. James, Senior Superintendent Wilfred Campbell, says the injured parent is from a community where there's an ongoing gang feud. The 22-year-old father was sitting in his car about 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, waiting on his daughter, when men on foot approached the vehicle and shot him several times in both legs. Investigators recovered 17 spent shells from the scene.
Investigation so far suggests that the area from which he is from, there is a gang war feuding in that area, and they may have gotten information as to his routine, and so they would have pounced on him. Currently, we are following some strong leads, and we are hoping that in short order, we may make a breakthrough in this matter.
The 50-year-old nurse who was involved in Monday's fatal crash on the Felicity roadway in Glendevon, St. James, has been slapped with 2 counts of causing death by dangerous driving. Dana Minto is to face the St. James Parish Court today. Those killed in the accident are 15-year-old Shante Rose, a student of Green Pond High School, and 52-year-old Franklin Hilton. Rose was walking with her sister and their mother when all 3 were mowed down. Director of the Road Safety Unit, Knut Hare, visited the area following the accident.
What the findings so far, we have seen evidence whereby will corroborate what the police have outlined, whereby the vehicle was engaged in some maneuver that proved to be perilous. The intelligence have told us that the driver of that motor vehicle was involved in an improper overtaking maneuver. And based on the fact that the vehicle was going down a hill, right, the vehicle would have been traveling at some level of speed. That when it came down into that ditch, it hit the ditch, it became airborne.
Hilton was reportedly pinned underneath the vehicle, which dragged him a short distance before coming to a stop.
We also realized that the driver did not react whatsoever to the eventualities in the traffic environment. There were no brake marks, no drag marks, so no brake was applied. What we found interesting was that the driver continued along a path that meters down the road. The driver was involved in another fatal collision whereby a gentleman this time got hit, and the driver continued down the road before eventually was able to stop the vehicle.
The St. James Public Health Department says it's prepared to serve a public health notice on the St. James Parish the St. James Municipal Corporation over the poor state of the Old Shoe Market located on St. James Street in Montego Bay. Chief Public Health Inspector at the St. James Public Health Department, Lennox Wallace, says his department toured the facility about 5 months ago and has provided a report to the Municipal Corporation to correct the health problems at the facility. 2 weeks ago, Chairman of the St. James Municipal Corporation and Mayor of Montego Bay, Homer James, toured the facility, which is owned by the Municipal Corporation. The Mayor said he would write to the St. James Public Health Department based on his findings.
I understand that the mayor would have toured that area recently and said that he would have been writing to us to visit that shoes market. And I'm simply asking for what? Because we would have visited, it was us, the health department, who would have visited there some months ago and apprised them of the current conditions there and seeing that they are the owner of the property. Whether the persons there are living, occupying illegally, it's not our concern. Fact is that the parish council must control their property.
He describes some of the health breaches found at the shoe market were also found at the People's Arcade on Howard Cook Boulevard.
We carried out an inspection on the old shoes market about 5 months ago, the same time that we would have conducted the inspection at the People's Arcade. We found similar activities that we would have had at the People's Arcade. Persons that are living there over time, persons that now give their permanent address at that site. Children are being born there, no sanitary facility that would have been there.
The Mandeville Regional Hospital received a surgical machine from the Chase Fund. Speaking at the official handing over ceremony, a Chase Fund representative said the Mandeville Rotary Club, the Church Teachers College and Chase Fund collaborated to donate the machine, which is worth about $3 million.
I say the Chase Fund is committed to Mandeville Regional Hospital to provide necessary pieces of equipment to enhance service delivery here and patient care at this hospital, as indeed in other hospitals that we have had interventions.
I can assure you that it is well appreciated. It will be put to good use. It's a very vital piece of equipment as we seek to provide an acceptable standard of health care to persons and patients.
In international news, Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe has made his first public appearance since the military placed him under house arrest on Wednesday. He turned up at the university graduation ceremony in the capital, Harare, accompanied by a security detail. There's been growing speculation over whether the deal has been reached to squeeze the 93-year-old leader out of power after 37 years of rule. Mugabe appears to have been resisting attempts to oust him, but he is reported to have pushed back on a deal to replace him with an interim leader. And just before we go, just to let you know again that the chairman of the RJR Gleaner Communications Group, Mr. J.A. Lester Spalding, is dead. Mr. Spalding died this morning at hospital. He became managing director of Radio Jamaica in 1978, and he has led the company up until now through its expansion and the recent merger with the Gleaner Company Media Limited. We'll have much more on that story later in Primetime News. I'm Milton Walker. Good afternoon.